So first of all, the old tried and true safe withdrawal rate of 4% is no longer the 4% rule. It's actually been increased to 5%. And in this video, I'll go over why that's been increased and 7 things you might not know about that rule, about what it was based on and why it's now changed. So if you've ever done financial planning on the back of a napkin where you just sit down and look at your bucket of money and you kind of use that 4% rule as how much you can safely take out, this video might give you some ideas on how you could potentially increase that. And those 7 things can really have an effect on the amount of money and, more importantly, the amount of peace of mind you can have in retirement. So right up front, I'm a fan of the 4% rule. First of all, because it's really conservative, and honestly, it creates less stress for me as a financial planner if we know we're just going to try and squeeze 4% out of your portfolio. Quite frankly, I don't think that's what people deserve, and I don't think the best retirements are built on that. But as a quick planning tool, it's a good place to start. But in a decade of helping people get into and stay in retirement, and as a chartered financial consultant, my retirees don't just follow that 4% rule, because that 4% rule is based on 7 things that, again, can really have an effect on the amount of money you can have. So the first principle that that 4% rule is based on that you might want to take a look at is the fact that that rule does not take into account fees and taxes. So I end up reviewing a lot of people's other financial statements, and a lot of times they have a financial advisor, and the amount of fees that are out there that are being charged, quite frankly, in my opinion, is too high. Wall Street has kind of set the system up to try and separate you from your money as quickly as possible. And I've done the math, and a lot of times I can see that what those investments are providing doesn't actually bring a lot of value to the clients. So that's one thing that that 4% rule doesn't take into account, is that those fees are coming out of there. Now, if you can find other value from your financial advisor, like a good financial plan or estate planning or things like that, that may be worth it, but that's a number you really have to get your hands around. And the other one is taxes. A good tax plan can actually not only offset all those fees, but can also increase the amount that you can take out on an annual basis if you do some good tax planning that could potentially reduce your taxes. The second thing that that 4 to 5% rule is based on is a specific asset allocation. Now, the way things used to be actually was better. People used to buy stocks and bonds. People don't buy stocks and bonds anymore. Most people, whether they're doing it themselves or their financial advisor, they're buying a bunch of mutual funds and bond funds. And as everybody could see during the inflation bubble when it popped, bond funds got cleared out just as much as the S&P 500. So that is something that has to be really taken into account for when you're allocating your money between stocks and bonds, or risky and safe, or however you want to think about it. Because if you end up taking something 4 or 5% out, thinking that those bonds are really going to save you if the market crashes and then everything goes down, that's something that could really affect your quality of life. The third thing that William Began, the guy who came up with that 4% rule, and why he changed it to the 5% rule, is because when he originally did that calculation, it was based on like a 2-fund strategy, just meaning the S&P 500 and again bonds. Now, after he did some additional research, he found that small caps, international stocks, cash, real estate, other things that he added into his formula, he was kind of more confident in saying that you could take out a little bit more every year than just that 4%. So a couple of the big ones that he ended up looking at were micro caps, which offers a lot more volatility, but also a lot more upside, and some of the more institutionally available investments that can actually help drive a comfortable withdrawal rate that's a little bit higher than 4%. And this is very, very important, is that that original rule was based on a 30-year retirement. So I always tell my clients that that 4 to 5% withdrawal rate is basically based on you dying with money in the bank. So on the day you pass away, you should still have money in your bank. That's a nice safe money withdrawal rate. So that original formulation was based on a 30-year retirement. Now, if you're like a lot of my firefighter or military or nurse or people with a pension and you're going to retire in your 50s, or if you have a lot of longevity in your family and you might live well into your 90s or beyond, you could be looking at a 30 or 40 or 50-year retirement, time that your money has to absolutely last, so that you're never feeling that stress of having to live paycheck to paycheck or just on your Social Security. What I've discovered in 10 years of doing this is that people's spending fluctuates, and it fluctuates a lot. A lot of people plan for a big retirement, they get into retirement and they get in those go-go years. And in the beginning, they might be spending a lot, going on vacation, seeing family and that type of thing. But then as time goes on, they'll either reel in their own spending, or sometimes I even have to call my retirees and tell them to take money out of their account and go have fun. So spending can go up and down. Then it usually goes down when people are in their slow-go years, they're staying home. But then one thing that has to be calculated for and constantly adjusted for is like that end of life, your no-go years. That's where medical expenses can start racking up. Long-term care expenses, where the most frequent comment that I get is just don't let me be a burden to my kids. Those things can actually increase spending through the roof to where we might have to sell houses or assets or clear out retirement funds in order to take care of like a dementia or an Alzheimer's or something like that. Your spending amount has to be taken into account when you're deciding how much you can take out of your bucket and still be safe. And so finally, the last thing that has to be accounted for is what's called sequence of return risk. It's fine to look at the stock market since the beginning and go to today and divide it by the number of years and kind of think to yourself that the stock market will always do 7% or 8% or whatever that number is. But that does not account for the fact that if you had $500,000 in your investment account and you retired in 1990 and you took $30,000 per year out, you were almost broke 10 years later, because the market took money out of the bucket at the same time you were taking income out of your bucket. By the same token, if you retired in 2000, right when the housing bubble started, you could take $30,000 out of that same $500,000 retirement account, and in 10 years, instead of being almost broke, you would have $1 million. So you would have taken out all that income and still had $1 million. So being able to reduce unnecessary risk without necessarily giving up a good income or good returns in the stock market, that's going to be super important for anybody when they're deciding how to allocate their investments to make it through to retirement successfully. So those are just the reasons why you want to know where that 4 to 5% comes from, have it put into a comprehensive income plan, and have the tools inside that plan to make sure that you have an easy, stress-free retirement with the amount of money you need to go to bed every night knowing that it'll still be there in the morning. If you haven't had your investment plan reviewed by somebody who specializes in retirement income or tax planning, and you want to see if you qualify for maybe a quick free review with my firm, go ahead and click the button below for a free retirement review, and based on your answers and the amount of time I have in my day, I'll give it a look, and if we can help you out there, that's awesome. If something in this video helps you out and you can take it to your financial planner, we're out here to help bring value to people, even if we don't work with them personally. So thanks so much.